Ray Dalio began sharing by first being truthful about the content of what he was going to communicate and then continuing. He stated that even if someone believes he is incorrect, he trusts that they will listen to whatever he has to say and consider the information he has to communicate. He stated that nobody is going to come to anyone's rescue, and the harsh reality is that he was right. The majority of us have never been exposed to the severity of the brutality that we are about to witness in our lives. There is going to be a breakdown in the economy, which will result in people losing their employment. There are going to be some folks who will have a hard time finding the next meal that they need to eat. The truth about the reality of how things are in life. For basically the same reasons, the same things keep happening over and over again over the course of time. A good number of these occurrences only take place once in an individual's lifetime, and you're going to be in a lot of trouble if you don't go back and check out how they work throughout the course of time. Therefore, there is a pattern that he could describe. It is a pattern that occurs repeatedly, and there is a specific place for us to be in that pattern right now. The next step is to understand it, not just because it has occurred in the past, but also to grasp how it occurs systematically. Once this is accomplished, one will have a better idea of how to cope with it. The same thing happened from 1929 to 1932. An excessive quantity of debt accumulated during the prosperous years led to a crisis that was caused by the debt. After that, in the year 1932, we achieved zero interest rates. And when they hit zero interest rates in 1932, just as they did in 2008, the central bank printed money and bought financial assets. When these cycles occur, what typically takes place is that central banks have the ability to stimulate the economy by lowering interest rates. However, this strategy is rendered ineffective if interest rates reach zero. The previous time that it reached zero interest rates was in 1932. And what they did then was the same thing that they did in 2008. And that was that the central banks produced a lot of money and bought government bonds. In other words, they did exactly the same thing. So, at this very moment, we are doing it. The interviewer inquired for further clarification by saying, and just to be clear, with the reason that they're doing that is so somebody has bought a government bond and the government is basically saying lend the money and they will build roads, for example, but the government will be paying back in a year or 2 to 10 years plus interest and would assume that makes it worthwhile, and the reason that the government is going in and buying those is to get back liquidity to help the people, and the reason that the government is going in and buying those is the response from Ray Dalio was yes. If one takes his line of reasoning into consideration, then not only the national government but also private businesses and people lack the ability to generate new currency. Therefore, the central government has the authority to decide what to do, such as imposing a tax on the people. It is able to collect money from the masses and can spend that money on anything it chooses to spend it on. On the other hand, unlike the central bank, they do not have the authority to print money or create new forms of currency or credit. The Federal Reserve is the nation's central bank. However, the Federal Reserve does not have the authority to spend money or decide how that money should be spent. Instead, Congress is responsible for those responsibilities. Every person, every business, and every government has a particular amount of money that is received as revenue, a certain number of expenses, and then a certain amount of savings. This money may be broken down as follows: income, expenses, and savings. You then do it on an individual basis, and because it works the same way for everyone, it puts people in a difficult situation for their income drops below their expenditures and they do not have adequate savings to cover the difference. After that, they put in their savings, which means that there are plenty of entities all over the world that are in trouble due to the fact that they do this. Because of this, the two branches of the United States government are required to distribute funds. To do this, they either print money or create it digitally, and the funds are distributed in the form of loans. The point was made abundantly evident when the interviewer provided a concise summary of what Ray Dalio had just said. He stated, so basically what they're doing is digitally creating money, which they're distributing to the government, and then the government decides how to disburse those funds. The news that the Federal Reserve will buy government bonds came from Ray Dalio. So, the transaction involves buying it, and they will also buy private bonds. They might pick a few companies, then tell you that they will buy the bonds from those companies, which is the same thing, and then lend to you. At different times in history, this has been the case. So, what we are going through right now is exactly the same thing that happened from 1930 to 1945. The interviewer asked again, what does that mean for the average person who doesn't have bonds? They don't think that way, and they might not even know what a 401k is or might not even have one. So how do they get through it? Is it best to just keep your head down and try your best to get through the storm? Or is there something they can learn from the past and use now to make things easier? Ray Dalio told him that it's the same for everyone and for every business. If you understand this, you will have a good grasp of it. He told us that we can do 3 things. First, look at what you earn, what you spend, and what you have saved. Then do a stress test to make sure everything is safe. You play out what would happen if you lost your income or if it fell below a certain level. Ask yourself, how long can you live a good life? And do you have enough money saved to last that long? You will need to figure out, if you lived a simpler life and made this much money, how many months or years could you live comfortably with that savings or income? The interviewer asked again, what countries or times have dealt with this kind of crisis well so that we can get through it with as little pain and suffering as possible? Ray Dalio answered by saying, well, Roosevelt did this differently, and that's an example. So again, between 1929 and 1932, interest rates went to zero, and money was printed. We had a big difference in wealth, so they got together and figured out how to keep things running smoothly and how to change things, whether by taxing or reorganizing so that the system works well. At the same time, there is a chance of conflict because that is what the world is going through. Consequently, Hitler came to power in Germany in 1933 as a result of the country's internal strife, with communists and fascists at loggerheads over the country's dwindling riches. That was back when there were 4 democracies. Several of these leaders emerged, and eventually, we had World War II. That's the political scene. But when it comes to personal finance, Ray Dalio says it all comes down to these 3 things: examining one's income, one's expenditures, and one's savings, and coming up with a plan together as a family. In what ways does Ray Dalio feel that schooling is extremely important? For him, school is priority number 1. His father was a jazz musician, and his mother stayed at home to raise him. Therefore, he came from very humble beginnings. He was blessed into having parents like that. Since then, he has graduated from college and entered a world where he has every possibility to succeed. He continued by saying that social skills, civic responsibility, and civility are just as crucial as academic preparation. In order to enter the workforce, effective education is up to interpretation. If you want to make money doing what you love, you should combine your passion with your work. You're more likely to excel in your job if you enjoy it and if it helps you feel fulfilled. College is not required by any means for education. The value of university education has been inflated. In a follow-up question, the interviewer pressed further. So as this next 3 to 5 years part of the cycle hits us, what is one thing that people can do that you know from the historical perspective will most insulate them from the probably emotional and maybe financial damage? Whatever you think is more important. One of the things I thought about was how to take the worst case situation and turn it into something amazing. Ray Dalio stated, knowing how to triangulate well means you can solve any problem you encounter on your journey to discovering your true nature and following your bliss. He stated that meditation is something that has helped him so much. It's good for you, he explained, since it helps you deal with stress and gives you the mental clarity to make sound choices. You'll know you've come a long way if you can maintain your composure and the sense of calm that comes with knowing you have a solid game plan and can effectively triangulate with others to ensure that you obtain the best counsel possible without having to solve the problem in your own brain. What are your thoughts about what Ray Dalio just stated? Hope to hear from you by commenting on your thoughts about this video down below.